All right then. So let's go ahead and make another episode tonight. What do we have here? Texas refuses to comply with federal government cease and desist letter over border enforcement. From Scanner News. All right, so here we go. The main gist of this story is that we have Texas actually trying to enforce its state border with Mexico and the overall national border, and you have the federal government that's suing them, basically trying to prevent them. So, to quickly sum up what's going on, there's a place in Texas, a city called Eagle Pass along the border, right? Now, within Eagle Pass, there is a park called Shelby Park. This park is about 50 miles in acreage, or it's about 50 acres in size, okay? And Texas National Guard showed up there recently. They kicked out the Border Patrol that were running the area. They were using as a base of operations to essentially try and process migrants. Texas National Guard showed up, kicked them out, and said, no, we're the ones in charge of the space now, because Eagle Pass, the specific side of Shelby Park, it seems to be a major focal point in terms of where these illegal immigrants are coming into the country. Anyhow, in any case, yeah, guys with guns for the claiming state authority kicked out the federal guys who probably did not have as many guns. That's essentially the gist of it, and they're blocking them from coming back. But we're going to go ahead. Now that we've summed up what's happened so far, we're going to go and get into reading it. All right, so pursuant to recently passed legislation on January 11th, the Texas Military Department was deployed to Shelby Park in Eagle Pass, Texas, a known hotspot for illegal immigration into the U.S., where state authorities enhance security measures. A little bit of context to this article that Scanner News did not include. Let's see, who wrote this article? Adrian Norman. The enhancing claim is kind of interesting because it was made by a guy who essentially is in charge of the union of Border Patrol, right? While at the same time you have the Biden administration in control of the Border Patrol is saying that no, what Texas is doing is wrong, but an entire union of the agents is basically saying we think it's good, or a spokesman for the agents, which is an interesting dichotomy. Because I think at this point, like, if you work for a CBP, you'd have to know that you are being used as an accomplice in funneling massive amounts of illegal immigration into the U.S. to serve the purposes of the Democratic Party in the U.S. Like, I don't know how you could continue to work for that organization and not recognize that. And it's kind of heartbreaking that people keep going along with it. Clearly, their Border Patrol organization or their union is upset about it because their spokesman came out and said that, what Texas is doing is helpful while Biden is complaining about it. And I don't know, it's just so dumb. You'd figure they would try to do more other than just saying, well, I guess what Texas is doing is a good thing. Well, you could probably just try and get a bit stronger. Maybe defy breaking the law. Like when the president orders you to do these things that are breaking the law, you just say, no, we're not going to do it. Have a nice day, but no. I wouldn't recommend that you go and quit your job because then there's no one to enforce the border. But you basically just say, we're not following orders that mean the intentional destruction of the country to serve your own corrupt purposes. Seems reasonable, but this is where we are. Anyhow, as part of the effort to regain control of the U.S. border with Mexico, the Texas National Guard prevented other officials from accessing the area, including Border Patrol agents. In the weeks prior, Border Patrol agents had used Shelby Park to hold migrants who had entered the U.S. illegally before they were transported for processing. The incident put the federal government on a collision course with the state government, which Texas officials argue has the constitutional right to enact border security measures with the federal government, or when the federal government refuses to secure the border itself. Shortly after Texas authorities took control, 3 migrants drowned. Oh yeah, there's this whole thing. So context, Texas authorities take over. Then you have these 3, a mother and 2 children, drown in the river as they're trying to cross. Which, happens all the time because there are floods of illegal immigrants coming. And you'd be surprised that, swimming is, I grew up swimming personally. This is not something that's, common, or it's not something that's always going to be a skill well enough for people to swim in a moving river. Granted, I don't think the Rio Grande is that fast moving of a river. Even so, if you don't know how to drown, you can slip under, and, well, if you don't have to swim, you slip under and you drown. And it's tragic, but it's such a corrupt, rotten system where you have these illegal immigrants, right? They want to get out of their countries that are having all sorts of problems with their economies, problems with crime, and organized cartels essentially running the show or competing with government for legitimate control. They're looking for a better life, and you have these nonprofit organizations funded by massive international interests and stupid leftists, and they basically tell the migrants, "Hey, go to the U.S. They'll take you in. It'll be fine." They make this giant journey all the way up through Mexico. They have to cross a desert, and then they drown in a river or they die out in the desert. And then they get here, and then turns out the places where there are not enough beds. The people, not even everyone here wants them. Like, these organizations are just blatantly lying to them, trying to get them to come, and then they wind up here. They wind up homeless, or they have to go with. Maybe they're lucky and they have family members who have a small house that they can live in, but then you have crowded little houses. And in the meantime, it's just destroying the American culture because we're importing millions of people from a foreign culture. I mean, you can't have them coexist forever. It's going to result in people getting frustrated and someone's going to do something stupid and snap. But if you just enforce the laws, none of this would ever happen. Well, that's the rant over. Let's continue with the article. However, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said in a statement that DHS's claims are contradicted by a Justice Department filing with the U.S. Supreme Court on January 12th, explaining that federal agents on the ground informed Texas of the situation only after the emergency situation had ended and Mexican officials had recovered several bodies. Basically, the DOJ itself even proved that, yeah, what Ken Paxton's saying, it's okay. So DOJ basically says that it's not the fault of Texas, which it shouldn't be. The state is trying to actively stop illegal immigration before it finally kills the state, but it's gone to unbelievably high levels, and it's taken unbelievably long for anyone to take the problem seriously. And Abbott's not even great because, like, when he sends illegal immigrants all over the country in buses, he's still, like, transporting illegal immigrants and funneling them around the country. I mean, it's great that you have all these blue cities are going like, well, all these migrants are coming. Well, like, Abbott can only send tens of thousands, and hundreds of thousands are coming anyway. So it gets spread all over the news that Abbott and DeSantis are the ones who are doing it all, when in reality it's like, no, it's an out of control problem that's eating away at the country. Let's see, January 14th, DHS tells Paxton to cease and desist. You have to stop doing this and let Border Patrol continue to funnel migrants all over the country per our wishes, which Border Patrol will do, because apparently they are just completely unwilling to stand up for the law or for themselves. I mean, here's the crazy thing. I remember that story, like, back in the day in the state of Texas, right? So one of the famous things about Texas is we have this organization called the Texas Rangers, and they exist currently as like a law enforcement thing. But back in the day, they were more like, I guess, more like a state militia or something, or almost. I don't know. In any case, there was this particular case in which a woman won the governorship back in like the early 1900s, closer to like the 1930s, Great Depression era. This woman named Ma Ferguson won the governorship, and she was a known corrupt politician. Like, all the Texas Rangers basically just resigned before they would be willing to work with her administration. I mean, those were guys of principle. Like, even if they were right or not, they just took one look at her and said, "I am unwilling to work for you. I'm going to go find work somewhere else." But we still have a border patrol that's unwilling to do anything, right? I mean, ideally, I wouldn't have them quit. I'd just have them look at Biden in the eye and say, "No, we are not going to be accomplices to you committing crimes." But that's where we are, unfortunately. So to continue the situation, DHS says, Texas, you got to let the CBP back in. Texas says, no, try us. And so Texas National Guard are now arresting illegal immigrants at the processing center. And we'll see what happens from there. Maybe we'll just send more buses, or maybe they'll be held for like a year and hope, cross your fingers that Trump wins, and then you can deport them. Or maybe the state goes all the way, starts deporting these people itself. Just don't care. We're going to start shoving you in random places. I mean, I'm kind of in that mood because, I mean, these people intentionally get rid of all their documentation on the way up, right? You don't even know where you're supposed to send them. So you can't really, like, you don't know where to send them. So therefore, it forces you to hold on to them a little bit longer. So call their bluff. Say, all right, fine. We're going to put you wherever we think you might want to go. And then you can have the problem of sorting out your paperwork, or you could just tell us where we'd like to drop you off, and we'll take you there and leave you there. So if you're from, I don't know, Honduras, and you want to go back to Honduras, well, we got a one-way plane ticket for you. We'll drop you off, and you're done. You could do the same thing with people who are coming from all over the world. You got rid of your documentation? Fine. We don't care. We're still giving you a one-way plane ticket out of here because you're not staying. I don't know. It's just so dumb. Paxton also rebuffed DHS's claim to have sole border enforcement authority, writing that federal officials have statutory power only to patrol the border to prevent the illegal entry of aliens into the U.S. At this point, it doesn't really matter. I see both as having legitimate authority to stop an invasion of either the state or the country. At least I want the state to protect itself because the country or the national forces are incapable of doing so. But, yeah, that's about the gist of it. We have some other stories pulled up about the same thing. We have one from Armstrong Economics. This guy's kind of interesting. I don't buy in 100% into everything that he says, but will this be a catalyst for a second civil war? I mean, based off of the responses that some people are giving these places, it could be because it directly threatens the future of what you want your country to be. You're importing an entirely foreign country, and one of two things will happen. They'll form little ethnic enclaves and colonies within the U.S. They'll stick together with their communities, and it'll get to a very tribal sense where you have like a bunch of small, disparate, essentially predominantly Hispanic communities from various backgrounds, and they're all sort of competing with the other Hispanic communities, but they all generally don't like the established American community. Or you'll have all these foreigners that get imported. They have no real identity. They coalesce into one form, and then they have to battle with the dominant American community that's already been here for access to resources. Both are legitimate situations. I mean, essentially, do you want a new Spanish-speaking culture with different ideas and different histories to start? I mean, they won't intermix because they don't have to because they already have their own community here because there's millions of them, and the scale of what it would take to fix this problem would just be like so easy for the mainstream media to criticize and rag on. I think it's going to take a massive deportation effort in the millions, which would be so hard to do given how corrupt the federal government is and how hard it is to do anything. I don't know how you fix it. Like, back in the day, you'd at least have, like, bigotry on your side. So you have the established American community that would be very hateful towards outsiders, and that would be a motivating factor for anyone to go back to their own home country, because clearly the people here don't like you. It's not something I recommend, nor something I want to go back to. But it was effective. You can't deny that. Now look at the current situation. You have all these people coming to take advantage of the American economy. It can't sustain everyone. The system is going to break sooner or later. And when all these people are stuck here with no money to even go back to their home country, what do you think happens? They're not going to leave. They're going to have a permanent fixture in the landscape, and you're going to start getting conflict between the two sides as things get worse because both want access for their resources and their communities, and they're going to get distrustful of each other, and things are going to collapse. This is the end goal of multiculturalism. It doesn't work, ever. You could look at any country drawn post-World War I, look at the various ethnicities and religions that compose them, and realize that when you have multiple countries or multiple cultures coexisting in one country, it fails every time. There's a reason why the third world never really was able to take off. Not only did these European powers pull out and leave absolutely no one there to help run the administrative side of government, but you also had these factional violence that started breaking up where everyone's vying for control. They serve their own religious and ethnic group as soon as they get into power. That breeds resentment amongst everyone else. There's a civil war. Somebody else gets power, and then the thing just keeps perpetuating. I mean, why do you think so many third world countries have dictatorships? Because sooner or later, people realize that the only way to make this country cohesive and to work is to rule with an iron fist over everybody that might have anything to say about it. And that's what's kind of coming to the U.S. That's the only way you would manage to stay together, is you need someone with an iron fist to crack down on everyone and force everyone to get along. And that's what the right's been dealing with, an iron-fisted government forcing us to get along with the left that doesn't like the right, and you have essentially all these immigrant communities that are going to come in and become their own presence, and they won't necessarily join the left. Like the left will help give them access to resources, but as soon as the left figures out that these people are predominantly socially conservative, like lots of Catholics from coming from South America, they're not going to mesh well with the left, who wants full-on LGBTQ stuff. So in terms of what's going to happen, I just see a complete and utter lack of cohesion, of national unity. They're in massive increase in tribalism. And I don't know how we could have a logical opinion of anything else, because there isn't a single example, as far as I know in history, where you have suddenly have these two completely different groups come together and say, we have no different, there's nothing that's different apart about us, when that's not true at all. Think about it this way. Do you want your kid growing up in a community that speaks English, or do you want your kid growing up in a community that speaks Spanish? Do you want, how attached to you are you to your own native language? Is that something that's important to you? And that's just one thing, right? Just language, for example. I like speaking English. I can't speak Spanish. I would love for my own kids to speak English. I want to live in a community of English speakers. Perfectly logical and reasonable things to want. The problem, you're going to get an increasingly fractured community where you have some people that speak English, some people that speak Spanish. A lot of people learn to speak both, but ultimately, are you going to be more loyal to the English speakers or the Spanish speakers? And some people fall in between, but most people are going to want to side with one or the other. I mean, culture is composed of things like religion, values, history, and language. At least we all have the same Judeo-Christian background. It's not as bad as Europe, when you look at them, they don't have that. What they have is that they're importing tons of Muslims. Muslims do not fit the Judeo-Christian worldview at all. So they have thousands of years of resentment towards each other. Well, not thousands. Hundreds. That would be more accurate. It hasn't been 2,000 years yet, so you can't say thousands. But it has been hundreds of years, and so, yeah. Anyhow, that's all I really want to talk about today. I had some other sources about this talking about the same thing, but they all repeat the same things. See, last week Texas took control of Shelby Park, 47 acres. Yeah, I had read that source somewhere, but yeah, that's the main gist of it. Again, so final touch on the Christian perspective. What the right thing to do is, I think you need to find a way to quickly detain all the illegal immigrants. You have to figure out where they're from, and you have to get them back to those countries immediately, because this is going to result in long-term chaos. Like, I don't see you can claim compassion all you want, but this isn't going to work. It's going to make people poorer here in the U.S. It's going to make the migrants who come here poorer as well. Like, they left with very little, and they're going to get here with nothing. It's going to lead to chaos, to violence. None of this is like this illegal immigration crisis going on. It's nothing short of like completely disastrous. Anyhow, what I hope for is a peaceful resolution. I hope that Trump is able to win the next election and we get those massive deportations, and I hope they are done humanely, logically, and efficiently. I hope that this nonsense, this nightmare situation in which an entire population is being imported into the U.S. to compete against the native population, I really hope that gets fixed. I hope it ends, because this I don't see a good future in this. Anyhow, that's about all I wanted to say. Thanks, and bye.